My name is Drew Harding, and I am doing my presentation on airport data. The software that I used in order to conduct the analytics on the data I got on airports, I used both Excel and Tableau. Both of these programs are used for inputting data, and then you can create powerful graphs and charts from them. Excel was good because I already had it on my computer and I'm already semi-familiar with it. I've used their graphing functions before, so what I was able to do is I inputted the data into Excel, and that's where I organized it, and I used my knowledge there to help get the data off the ground. And then after that I inputted the data that was then cleaned into Tableau, and then I was able to use their more powerful graphing capabilities and able to create some location geo-based charts that you will be able to see later in this presentation. And Excel was paid for, but I already had it on my computer, so I didn't have to pay for it right now. And Tableau, I just used the free trial, so that was pretty convenient. My data, when I downloaded the data from the airline website, it was not organized, so I had to download the description of the information. Originally, I tried to organize the data without looking at this, and it was difficult. And then I realized that I could see this, and then it made it very easy to start to organize the data using the text-to-column feature in Excel. So I just looked at the character line, and then I was able to just set where the column should start and end, and then everything else is relatively simple and straightforward. So when I was cleaning my data, I used the text-to-columns feature in Excel, which made it very easy because there's a fixed width. And I also cleared out any records that had missing data in them. So if there was a column that didn't have an input, and I cleared out that record so that that data is not impacting our results. And in order to remove the duplicates, there were only origin names, so there were going to be multiple of those at some time. So if I removed all those duplicates, then I'd be removing actual data. So I put the first two columns back together. The first column is a code that goes with the flight, and then the second column is the origin. So I figured that if there are any of those entries that had that exact code plus the origin, that it would be a duplicate and that I could remove that. So I searched for duplicates and removed those, and then I separated the columns back out using the text-to-columns feature once again. After that, I labeled the columns so that I could easily distinguish what the information was. And then I sorted the columns by date, so that the information was in a clear way to follow, and I could follow the information. Alright, this is my first graph. This graph is flight frequency by city. As you can see, that this is just the top cities in the data, because there are far too many cities to list in a graph that would be readable. So, and the other thing to know is that once the cities that aren't on the list, all their values are pretty much very similar, and they do not vary very much from each other, so you're not missing a whole lot of information there. As you can see from this chart, the most popular city to fly from would be Los Angeles, and then followed by Columbus, Jackson, Salem, and then Washington, D.C. And these are all big cities, and that makes sense because that's where people will be traveling to and from a lot for business and holidays and things like that. So this is not a very surprising chart. All the information is pretty clear, and I think you could use this information if you're trying to establish where in the United States are the most popular places to fly from. In this graph, you can see the frequency of flights by date. Now, we have a large amount of flights that occurred in the year 1989, so that kind of skews the data a little bit. However, once you get past that year, the data is much more consistent, and you can get a better idea of when the most frequent times to fly were. And as you can see, it kind of coincides with gas prices. If you are able to know when the fluctuations in those were in United States history, the cheaper the gas were, the more flights that we're having typically. And as you can see in the recent years, it's kind of peaked up a little bit because we've had cheaper gas since then. So this is interesting to see how the amount of flights have changed over the years. and this could be useful in predicting when there would be a good time to open an airport. Now this graph is a list of origin locations, and I did this by inputting the data into Tableau, and I was able to use their geomapping feature to pinpoint where all the locations are of flights that have taken off in the United States. So as you can see here, there's a pretty good spread throughout the United States, although the Midwest is pretty sparse, and then with the East Coast, New York and New England area being the most popular. And there are only 3 locations in Alaska as well, so that is not a very popular location. And mind you that this only looks at the United States and not Canada as well, so that also impacts the graph. This graph explains flight frequency by state. The bottom of it has the states listed, and then the bars above it say how many flights took off out of that state. As you can see, certain states are a lot more busy than others, and by looking at this graph you would be able to tell which states would be the best for opening up a new airport, or which states you'd want to avoid if you're looking to find a state that has a lot of flights coming to or leaving from it. The data that I looked at and analyzed was very good and had a lot of good information in it. However, it was not perfect. It could have used a little bit more information in order to allow me to create more robust reports. Some information that would have been helpful would have been the destination of the flights or where they're going, the type of plane that was flying, and because that would give me some sort of idea of the type of flight or the amount of people that were on it. So just more information leads to better analytics because you're able to draw more conclusions. And also some more complete data would have been nice because I had to remove a lot of data records because they did not have complete information available. My personal suggestions would be to add more columns of information when collecting data so that there'll be more ways to analyze what is going on. So that's just kind of talking about what I just mentioned, where having more information is better. The more stuff you have, the more trends you'll be able to find out when you put it into the computer. You can only learn so much from limited information, so the more you have, the more you'll know. And if I had access to more powerful graphing programs, then I would be able to analyze the information further, and I'd be able to break down the graphs into years and things like that, so you'd be able to get information based on averages instead of single points in time. So you'd be able to look at a year in total or a month in whole or a state in whole and be able to see what times it was active and other finer information like that. So that would just allow you to get more out of the data in whole. So what can we use this for? We can use this information for, like I mentioned before, when we're going over the graphs, deciding where to build an airport, or predicting the number of flights for a given year or a given city. And that'd be good if you're trying to figure out where most people are flying from, or like where you need to beef up security if you're the TSA. And you can also use this information just to help to track the number of flights that are going on throughout the year. So you can use this information a lot of ways, and it's very useful for the flight industry. And if you use the correct analytics software like Excel or Tableau, then you can get good information out of the data that you can use for many purposes. Thank you for listening to my presentation, and I hope you have a great day.